about a total of 813 more BTC since that drop happened. And if we go back 6 months, they've added a total of about 64.3K Bitcoin, worth tens of billions of dollars, I believe. So it's still looking quite strong from sharks and whales right now. And I think we mentioned it last time we talked, but the only concern I have is that stable coins aren't really being accumulated. So the dry powder that implies that whales and sharks have more and more and more to swap for Bitcoin, that's a little on the limited side because they've already been swapping so much Tether and USD coin.
Welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and I have Brian from Santiment with me. And of course, guys, you know we're going to do a deep dive into the metrics and what's happening with Bitcoin and altcoins and even XRP, as we got news that the XRP, or the first XRP ETF, spot ETF, has been filed in the United States by Bitwise. Brian, great to see you.
Great to see you. Yeah, lots going on. We obviously had a correction the past 3 to 4 days after one of the more predictable tops. I wouldn't say it was just an obvious given, but Friday was kind of when we were seeing peak euphoria. And sure enough, about 24 hours after that, midway through the weekend, we start to see this nosedive from a lot of crypto prices. So many people are trying to figure out what to do next. And that's what we'll try to do here on the call.
Yeah, absolutely. And as it relates to Bitcoin, I've been telling people, be cautiously optimistic. We don't know if the bottom is in yet, and there could still be more volatility before we actually start breaking out to new all-time highs. And then, Brian, to your point, you throw into the mix a bunch of macro news about war and this and that, it just adds fuel to the fire.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there's always real world news that can throw a wrench into what the probable direction was going to be in crypto. And I think with the news that kind of broke in the Middle East, there's a lot more reasons than just whales and FOMO and FUD among the crowd that are causing price havoc right now.
So let's take a look at the data and what is it telling us?
Yeah, of course. So we'll start with just a quick update on what we saw Friday. We posted this out to the public. It actually went super viral. It was a little unexpected that it got quite as much attention as it did, but we basically said, sentiment is at a year high in terms of bullishness. This is the ratio of positive comments versus negative comments using our algorithm, which is not a perfect science, but a pretty good one. We're able to pick up if someone is, mentioning Bitcoin in a positive light versus a negative light, if people are saying I'm buying or to the moon and stuff, and it isn't sarcasm, right? We're able to pick up that it's bullish. And long story short, we see this huge spike in euphoria after this 15 to 20%, I forget exactly what the rise was, but around that range, bounce right here. And we're kind of flattening out right at that moment. And we warned people. We basically just said, if you're awaiting Bitcoin's new all-time high, it may need to wait until the crowd slows down their own expectations. There are currently 1.8 bullish posts toward Bitcoin for every one bearish post. And I'd say it averages maybe more like 1.2 to 1. There's always a little bit of a bullish bias. People don't want to just be on social media talking negatively about crypto. They're into it for a reason. They expect prices to go up long term. But when it goes up, almost 2 to 1 like this, that's a sign that we're getting pretty overheated and people are putting a little too much buy pressure without any sell pressure. And in a zero-sum game, you always need both, or else prices tend to suddenly pivot and go the opposite direction. And that's exactly what happened. And now everyone's like, oh, maybe Santiment sort of knows what we're talking about. And excuse me, the question is, where are we now? There's so many different things we can look through. I'll try to get through some of what the crowd is doing at this moment after the mini collapse that we saw, as well as how the whales are accumulating. And you can see right here, just off of prices, mostly a sea of red. Over the past week, this is from last Wednesday to this Wednesday, it's only down a modest 2.5%. Ethereum down about 6%. But you can see especially assets like Monero, which are still getting delistings from major exchanges right now, dropping 16%. There's still some meme coins doing quite well. You can see Shiba Inu up 8% in the past week, Pepe up 14, Bonk up 17. We'll dive into how meme coin performances are looking as of now toward the end of the call. But I think another thing, as we alluded to at the beginning, this is very much being impacted by the war concerns. We saw the same phenomenon going back to 2022 with the Ukraine and Russia war news when that first broke back in, I think, what was it? The early part of this year, something like April or May, when we really started to see the Israel and Palestine situation pick up for the first time and hit global mainstream. That's when we started to see a little bit of a dip there. And now it's back. We're seeing a pretty big consciousness spike in terms of the Middle East conflict. And all of the top keywords, Iran, Israel, war, missiles, East, Middle, these are all related to the war right now. And people are clearly concerned. When there's war, there are economic consequences that can trickle over to crypto. Some think that war can actually be a long-term benefit to crypto. Maybe that's the case, depending on what kind of war you're talking about. From an ethical perspective, we at Santiment hope everyone is okay, and we're not rooting for war ever. But yes, I mean, if currencies collapse and more reliance is on decentralized currency exchange, yes, I guess I see that point. But the usual immediate impact is we see a retrace and a bit of a drop due to economic consequences that usually translate over to crypto.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And like you mentioned, we saw a bit of this with the Ukraine-Russia war, and in the short term, super volatile, but then eventually things went back to normal business. I want to make sure I use the right words here, because I'm not trying to make light of war, obviously, but the markets eventually stabilized and started moving up. And there could be factors where, because governments do money printing to fund wars and all these different things, that liquidity ends up finding its way through the markets, and people get bullish because they're like, oh, the governments keep printing, I'm going to put my money in assets.
Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting phenomenon, and it's hard to say when these initial pieces of news break how long of an impact this will have on markets. But based on history, we usually see somewhere like a 24 to 72 hour reaction to the news. And then markets tend to normalize as long as things don't get even worse than what that initial news report was.
For sure.
So it can often be kind of a sell the rumor, buy the news situation.
Can we look at what the whales are doing, as far as are they buying, selling? How are they navigating this type of activity that's taking place?
Totally. Yeah, let's take a look. So in terms of this, this tier right here, this is just the 10 plus BTC wallets and their combined holdings. Still looking good. This is one thing that we're still optimistic about. There was a little bit of a flattening out period, and when whales actually take a break from accumulating, that's when we tend to see tops. This one was kind of a mid-sized one, but after that drop back on the 30th, like right after it happened, we started to see more accumulation. It's not much, but they've added about a total of 813 more BTC since that drop happened. And if we go back 6 months, they've added a total of about 64.3K Bitcoin, worth tens of billions of dollars, I believe. So it's still looking quite strong from sharks and whales right now. And I think we mentioned it the last time we talked, but the only concern I have is that stable coins aren't really being accumulated. So the dry powder that implies that whales and sharks have more and more and more to swap for Bitcoin, that's a little on the limited side, because they've already been swapping so much Tether and USD coin for Bitcoin over the past 2-ish months or so when they really started to roll.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I could imagine, with the semi or mini euphoria that we saw last week with Bitcoin going to 66, the whales, if they're using data and so forth, they're going to sit back and say, we're not going to buy, let it drop, then we'll buy. We'll look for those opportunities.
Yeah, tale as old as time. It's kind of just, this is the way they make money. In addition to holding long term, when they want to add a little extra to their stacks, they can collectively push down prices or just decide to take a pause, swap some Bitcoin for a few yachts. I kid, of course, but you never know what they're doing. And then they wait for prices to drop and then buy back in. Prices go back to pre-yacht buy prices, and suddenly they have a free yacht. So that's kind of how it works when you have that kind of capital in a sentiment-driven sector like crypto.
Absolutely. Is there any other data from a Bitcoin standpoint that you want to highlight?
Yeah, a few things. This is a bit of a look at some of the top caps together, beginning with Bitcoin's total amount of holders. So conversely to what the whales are doing, the total amount of non-empty wallets, as you would imagine, is mostly comprised by tiny wallets. It's a lot easier to make a wallet that's the equivalent of $1 as opposed to $10 million, and there's way more of them. So when you see drops, that actually is a sign that a rally can either begin or continue, because these small holders are liquidating their wallets and the sharks and whales are scooping up those coins. Right now, it's still trickling up a little bit, but I'm noticing it's been flattening out since September. There seems to be some contentness from retail traders to take profit, maybe going back to August, September of last year. I think October was when the rally really began to take off. But the point is, we aren't seeing crazy amounts of retail wallets being created right now. So even though FOMO had been going nuts toward the end of September, we're not seeing an immense amount of new wallets being created on a daily basis. I consider that a good long-term sign. Naturally, you're going to see this growth over time. This is a 4-year look at Bitcoin wallet growth. And for the good of the network and crypto at large, you want to see more wallets being created. But as long as it's not rapid growth like this, which would indicate FOMO, we're usually in a pretty good place. And then Ethereum doing its thing, it's much harder to tell with Ethereum because DeFi and staking just make Ethereum wallets so much easier to create. If I put these on a shared axis, look at how much the amount of non-empty Ethereum wallets dwarf the amount of non-empty Bitcoin and Tether wallets. It's just insane, more than twice the amount, almost 2.5 times the amount of Ethereum wallets compared to Bitcoin.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Boy, I am very curious as to what happens this month because, there's been a big sentiment of Uptober, right? And
yeah,
I remember you talking about this in the last episode, that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and whatever you want to call it. And, could the herd could have been screaming Uptober, and September was not as bad as history has shown us. But could that flip because people are so excited about October that October is not a great month?
Yeah, I stand by my theory that we have way too small of a sample size in crypto to be able to declare that 1 month is always good and 1 month is always bad. It's one thing, like if we say Fridays are a good day of the week, there's at least been a few thousand Fridays, if I'm calculating right, maybe somewhere near 1,000 Fridays that have happened since crypto was introduced back in 2008, way back in pizza times. But when it comes to looking at 15 years of data, and let's say 11 of those 15 Octobers were really good, that's not nearly enough. If you talk to any statistician, to be able to say, okay, we can confidently declare that, 11 out of 15 Octobers means you can celebrate every October because crypto is going up. And especially when you start seeing words like Uptober trending, that's a pretty good sign that the mainstream crowd is just kind of believing that this time of year is always bullish. You don't want them to believe that. If the average retail trader is just buying into this narrative, it actually creates a higher probability of the opposite result coming true. So I would pump the brakes on your enthusiasm that crypto is going to go up this month simply because of the timing. It could go up for plenty of reasons, and then if it does, people might think, "Oh, see, October is validated. I knew that it would go up." It could go up for so many reasons, and we'd have to be kind of cautious when it comes to playing the timing game. I see all the time people saying, I think that the all-time high is going to happen in March of 2025. And we always scratch our heads and go, why? If you believe that crypto is just going to chill for now and then suddenly go up in March, why do you have any crypto at all? If you're that confident, don't play the timing game is what I say. Play the long-term situation, because timing in the markets always, or I'm sorry, the amount of time in the markets always beats timing. And any investor will tell you that, especially from an equities background. It's almost impossible to predict. And when we have something like the halving going on in Bitcoin earlier this year, remember, it wasn't the month of the timing that crypto went up. It was like the 6 months before it, as people were anticipating it. So pay attention to the stuff that's going on deep into the future, rather than saying, okay, this event is happening now, I'm going to wait until like the day before it happens and then buy in, right? So that's my tangent about timing and how I think Uptober is kind of BS.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely something for folks to keep in mind. It's good advice, and it goes past the herd mentality and your feelings and emotions and what you think the market's going to do. It's best you look at the data. And to your point, it could be October, but it may not be. You have to be prepared for both, and it's best to look at data. Let's talk about XRP, because we got some big news yesterday that Bitwise Asset Management filed for the first XRP spot ETF in the US. Obviously, this is a top 10 asset by market cap. And it's there's a big community. There's also a lot of controversy around it. There's obviously a deadline this week where the SEC may appeal the ruling, or I should say early next week. And, we don't know what's going to happen there, but this is still some good news. What are you seeing for XRP?
Yeah, from a social perspective, if we look at the top 10 trending coins, these are the assets that are seeing the highest percentage of discussion rise compared to their usual discussion rate. Outside of Curve, which is seeing quite a bit of attention themselves, XRP is the highest in crypto in terms of discussion rate right now. So clearly people are quite excited about it. You can see right here in our AI-generated explanation of why it's trending. Recent filings by Bitwise Asset Management for a spot XRP ETF have generated significant interest, signaling a move toward legitimizing XRP as an investment vehicle. So yeah, clearly people are excited about it. Notice though, so this little mini chart shows the social volume of XRP over the past week. It peaked here a couple days ago, and then right after that, prices collapse. And yes, part of this was because crypto overall started to see a retrace, but other assets did not see this sharp of a decline. And I think this is a perfect example of a buy the rumor, sell the news, where everyone thinks that this news is going to be good for XRP, and then the sharks and whales and the powers that be say, no, we're not going to be pumping XRP yet. And this has happened with like Bitcoin's ETF at the beginning of 2024. I think it was May or June when Ethereum got their own. you see the news and everyone thinks it's bullish, and then suddenly we see a retrace. And this doesn't mean that the news isn't bullish. It just means that the over enthusiastic people got a little too excited here, bought at the top, and they need to be a little more patient before the effects of this news. Of course, this is still a rumor right now. They've only filed, but assuming it's approved, that's when you're really going to see a lot of bullish momentum. So it's basically people getting excited about speculative news right now. And I think it's a very classic buy the rumor, sell the news situation.
Gotcha. Yeah. To your point, just news, it hasn't been approved. You know, just because you file something doesn't mean it's going to get approved. It's a good sign, but there's also this looming appeal coming up, and we don't know what the SEC is going to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, the probability of an ETF for XRP is a lot higher than it was a week ago because now we have a filing. So that's great if you're an XRP fan. Just don't get overly excited, especially when there's so much news that can just manipulate markets. You never know with some of these media sources who put out a report that makes something seem probable when it's still a far way away. But at least according to the metrics right now, we saw a gigantic amount of transaction volume on this news. It was about a 3-month high here. And then going down similarly with circulation, this is the amount of unique tokens moving on a daily basis. And we saw 1.35 billion XRP being moved on September 30th. That was the highest since August 1st. And then this one might be key right here. I actually like to see that the average returns of addresses that have been active in the past 30 days, they're back in the red, down about 2%. So there's actually slightly less risk than average if you were to buy during any time during XRP's existence as a publicly traded coin. You'd be buying while the average traders are slightly underwater on the short to mid-term time scale. That's a good thing. From a 365-day perspective, they're just barely above 0%. So if we start to see this one get a little below zero, these are the ultimate times to buy. Like we saw about 4 weeks ago on September 6th, they were both way underwater, the short and long-term returns. And then suddenly we see this huge spike. And that's, I mean, almost every time when you see average returns well below 0%, it's such a great signal that buying is a very likely good strategy. And we're at least in a situation where XRP looks like it's leaning toward a buy candidate once again.
Yeah, it's fascinating and how these things play out with sentiment and buy the rumor, sell the news events and so forth. And that's where this data is so helpful to show you where there might be buying opportunities and when possibly to sell based on what's happening in the market. Any other data, regards to XRP, or maybe we could jump to altcoins and like different categories like meme coins and so forth?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that XRP is pretty neutral in terms of sentiment. So even though it's getting a lot of discussion, I think it's a polarizing topic. Otherwise, we'd be seeing super bullish spikes like this where everyone's just talking about it positively. So that's a good sign as well. I'd keep that in mind. It's not just about the amount of discussion. It's about like what ratio of the discussions are bullish versus bearish. So there's still kind of a tug of war going on between bulls and bears, probably because this correction has pulled this down. I bet right after the announcement of the ETF filing, it was way like super bullish like here. And then people saw the retrace and said, oh, okay, I guess it's not a big deal. So I find that interesting too. Okay, so in terms of meme coins, I've got this chart. This is pretty noisy. So I'm going to turn everything into 1 week bars instead of 1 day.
Yeah, some of these meme coins have been starting to gain some life again? I think you highlighted some like SHIB and Bonk and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, over the past week, they're still some of the better performers. And we actually put out an insight yesterday about Dogecoin looking a bit intriguing on the bullish end. There's no guarantees, and this isn't investment advice, but we do see that whale activity has been particularly heavy for Dogecoin right now. This is like 3-day bars, just to kind of give broad looks at what the metrics are doing. 1,203 whale transactions at the end of September. That was the highest in about 4 months. And then we're followed up with the largest amount of daily active addresses since early April, 7-month high. This tells me that there's a lot of buying the dip going on, and it's not just retail traders. This blue bar here indicates that even after whales sold the top, that's clear based on this bar right before the green turned to red here, the whales are still being very active even on this downtrend. So what is most likely happening is they sold and then bought back in really quickly. And I like the look of that. And of course, Dogecoin does have some control over other meme coins. It works a little like Bitcoin, but for memes specifically, where Doge tends to go first, and the profits of Dogecoin redistribute into other meme coins like Bonk, WIF, Shiba Inu, and others. So if you're into meme coins, you should be rooting for Doge to have a little bit of a rebound here over the next few days or a couple of weeks. And that can very well start another cycle of meme coin excitement.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm almost, I have a personal bias. I'll be fully transparent. I'm not a big fan of meme coins. So if I see liquidity going to them, I kind of get annoyed. But
now, when you say, by the way, and I respect that take, I think a lot of people have very mixed opinions about them and whether they should be part of the crypto ecosystem. But is it more so what they offer to crypto, or is it, maybe like the volume gets pushed into meme coins when it would be better served to stay in Bitcoin? What's your opinion on why meme coins aren't very great?
yeah, I mean, one, as you mentioned, the liquidity, it sucks liquidity away from Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And second, it takes away some liquidity from the blue chip altcoins. I know ultimately there's some rotation from memes to blue chips, like your Cardano, like your XRP and so forth, right? But also some of these are like projects that pop up overnight. I'm not putting Doge and SHIB in there, but the ones that pop up on Base or Solana, and then they go nuts, and then you have all these people promoting it on social media. I find that so annoying because I know what it is, and I know there's a high possibility of a rug that can take place.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it really is the perfect example of the short-term, more shilly community and where they kind of live. It's through meme coins that don't really have developers, don't really have real life purposes in most cases, not all, but it's kind of a matter of what your approach is to crypto. If you're in it for the long term, you're probably not the biggest meme coin fan. If you're in it for a quick buck and more of the gamble aspect and very sentiment driven investments that are perpetuated by trading groups that you may or may not be connected to, then meme coins might be more up your alley. But it's regardless of any of our opinions, it's undeniable that they do have an effect on the overall crypto ecosystem, and they can't simply be ignored, even if you never want to touch them with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll see, man. Hopefully, don't get me wrong. And I know some people hold meme coins. I'm not saying I don't want you guys to make money who are watching and listening, but hopefully it's not as what we saw earlier this year, where there's a ton of liquidity, almost front running the market. The memes are front running the market a bit. It's more balanced this time around, I guess, as we get later into the bull market.
Totally. Yeah, it's really the predictability that's the hard thing with meme coins. And, we don't give investment advice as it is, but if we do, provide insights, the the least confidence that we have is usually in the meme coin sector because of the lack of long-term development that we see in them that show that they have long-term sustainability, which makes them more of a crapshoot. So take that as you will, but what we can say is that the social dominance is huge right now. It's spiked to the highest level of interest in about 4 months here. And yes, that is, to your point, Tony, at the expense of layer ones and layer twos that are seeing very declining levels of discussion right now. So this is a bit of a warning sign for crypto in general. When you see meme coin discussions get super high, it's usually a reflection of just the overall crypto crowd getting overly euphoric. So we saw like Bitcoin's positive versus negative comments. This is another way of looking at, you know, the crowd's mood overall. And when it starts going towards speculative assets, it's often a caution flag for crypto in general. And I'm even curious, like looking in the past just a day, yeah, so it's calmed down a lot. You can see right here, this spike here in pink happened maybe 12 hours before the official top for Bitcoin. And it was the highest level of discussion toward meme coins since late May. And late May was also a time when we were getting very close to a top. Not quite as perfect as this one, but regardless, I think this is a pretty solid metric. When you just see meme coins rise in discussion, it's never a bad idea to take a little profit to stay safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, great stuff. Always insightful. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's been a pleasure, Tony. Always great catching up, and we'll do it again in a couple weeks.